they started assigning moral value to certain identity characteristics. And so if you were a white, straight, Christian, male, etc., you were in what was known as the oppressor class. And if you were the opposite of all those things, you were in the oppressed class.
You're watching Restoring America, where we shine a light on the fundamental values of this country and all the reasons why they're worth saving. This week, we're going to talk about whether the left is losing ground in the culture war. I'm Kaylee McGee-White, and this is Restoring America. For the past several years, the left has waged a relentless battle on our cultural institutions. From higher education to Hollywood, to the church, and to everything in between, leftist activists successfully have targeted, and in some cases even overrun, the institutions that form the bedrock of our society. But November's election offered a rare rebuke to the left's affront. Nearly every single state in the nation swung to the right. Americans, by and large, made it clear that they're sick of being ordered around and bullied by a mob that has no respect for their values. But we shouldn't assume the left will take these losses lightly, or even learn anything from them. If anything, leftists will simply find new ways to refer to and push things like DEI, gender ideology, and censorship. So what can conservatives do to capitalize on their recent gains in the culture war and prevent the left from coming roaring back in the next election cycle? My guest today is going to explain more on this. But before we get to him, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. And for more, head to washingtonexaminer.com. With me today is Peter Laughin, a contributor for the Washington Examiner and a reporter for the National Catholic Register. Peter, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks for having me, Kaylee.
You've written a lot about how you've previously been pretty pessimistic about conservatism's chances in the culture war and about how the left has really dominated that space for a long time. Was there anything about the past few months, this election cycle, that has changed your mind in that regard?
Yes. It's more to do, however, the fact of how Donald Trump won, not just that he won. So the left has defined the terms of the culture war debate for the last 10 years. And by that I mean they started assigning moral value to certain identity characteristics. And so if you were a white, straight, Christian, male, etc., you were in what was known as the oppressor class. And if you were the opposite of all those things, you were in the oppressed class. And how this translated politically was that Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans were meant to speak for and stand for all of the oppressors, and the Democrats, who had a black woman candidate, just the opposite. And to enforce this cultural narrative, they built something like a Death Star of communication. They had every single cultural institution reading off the same script, saying the exact same thing. They had Hollywood, they had the news media, they had academia, K through 12 education, and on and on and on. Sports leagues were all suddenly saying the exact same thing. And so when I was pessimistic about it, I was looking at this Death Star thinking, wow, how can this possibly be defeated? But just like the Death Star in Star Wars, there was a fatal flaw in the design. And the fatal flaw was, in order for it to work, in order for it to be operational, all of the voters in the oppressed class had to vote a certain way. And if that changed, it was going to detonate from the inside. And that's exactly what you saw in this election. So it wasn't as if Donald Trump won because there was a huge white turnout. It was, no, he won a 41% improvement with Hispanic men. These crazy numbers like that of people who are supposedly in the oppressed class switching over. And now that that's happened, we just can't take their whole paradigm, we can't take their moral terms seriously. So yeah, my mind has been changed. It's an incredible comeback.
And it seems like there is an opportunity now for conservatism to gain back some of the ground that it has lost in the recent decade or so. And specifically with the Christmas season coming up, I see some of the institutions that have been under attack for a long time playing a key role in that. So what do you think even the church could do to help conservatism regain some ground in the culture war?
That's a great question. And I think it's a very delicate, very precious time for the American church as it involves itself in politics and in culture in this way. Most experts would say we've passed what's known as Christendom, the time where Christianity was the dominant moral, cultural force in America. And it's been rejected and replaced by something else. And now it feels as if we're getting a second look. C.S. Lewis would describe this as it's much more difficult to win back somebody who's divorced you than it is to court somebody for marriage for the first time. And that's kind of what Christianity, Christians, people of traditional values are attempting to do right now. We've been rejected, and now we're trying to win back the hearts of the people who rejected us. And they're giving us a second look, so it's this incredibly sensitive time. There's a few ways I think that we need to pivot and be a little bit better about understanding which time, which era we're in. Maybe we could do a better job of leading with the goodness and the beauty of traditional values of the church. I loved the opening in Notre Dame last week for this reason. Like, look at this magnificent building that only somebody deeply in love could have made. I loved showcasing that as part of this vibe shift. I thought that was straight from God. That was perfect. And the goodness, and as we know in Scripture, they'll know us Christians by the way we love one another. And so now's the time to really love one another and really show how beautiful this life is, how beautiful traditional values are. And when we talk about the truth of things, when we make our arguments again, let's be simple. Let's reintroduce ourselves. What do we mean by the word God? Who is Jesus? Who are these words that everybody's familiar with but maybe doesn't understand? And let's be very humble and let's explain things very simply in order to draw people back in.
Do you think that there's anything else politically that conservatives and even the incoming Trump administration can do to capitalize on the recent ground that they've gained and to prevent the left from coming roaring back just the next election cycle?
Sure. It seems that we're entering a dark space with the cultural left now that they know they've lost. And they know they've lost. There's no coming back from being fully rejected by the oppressed class, which just happened at the election. And so I think we're starting to see now some very dark, desperate things happening. For instance, the CEO of United Health is shot, and there is a real debate on the left right now over whether the guy who did this is a hero. And I think we're going to see more things like that. I think we're entering a darker space there. I think one thing that conservatives, Christians can do in order to capitalize and sort of hold our gains is mature away from owning the libs quite as much. It's been very important to do that. So there's nothing against that. For the last 10 years, it's been very important to go to college campuses and highlight the insanity that we're seeing and talk to people and try to get them to defend themselves. And then, yes, sometimes laugh at the fact that they can't because they're so arrogant. And they had been so arrogant. But now that we've won, now that we're in a much higher place, maybe we want to mature past just owning the libs all the time. And we can solidify our gains by, again, like I was saying a minute ago, let's show how well this works. Let's showcase the positive moral vision. Why do we have these traditional values to begin with? Well, we've had them for thousands of years because they work and they're beautiful and they're good and they're true. And so let's put that foot forward and maybe step away from the space we've been in for the last 10 years when we've just been laughing at white college-educated women with purple hair and 10 piercings lecture us on how morally depraved we are. Even though that is funny and I'm laughing just thinking about it now, I think we can move into a better moral space.
Well, all great points. Thank you so much, Peter, for joining. And for more breaking news, exclusive interviews, and conservative views, be sure to check out washingtonexaminer.com.